All right, today we are diving into something a little different. It's a really unique way of looking at earthquakes called triune harmonic dynamics. It comes from the researcher Kevin L. Brown, and it makes a very specific forecast for the year 2027 by thinking of our planet less like a rock and more like, well, a musical instrument. So let's get into it. So let's just start with the big idea, the question that's at the heart of this whole thing. What if earthquakes, these massive, seemingly chaotic events, aren't random at all? What if they actually follow a kind of rhythm, a pattern, almost like a piece of music being played on a planetary scale? It's a wild thought, but it's the core concept we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so to really understand the 2027 forecast, we can't just jump to the end. First, we have to learn the language it's written in. We've got to decode the basic rules of triune harmonic dynamics, the hidden mechanics that this theory suggests are running everything behind the scenes.
The first rule is this idea called the informational substrate. Now, that sounds super technical, I know, but the concept is actually pretty simple. Imagine the physical world we see, the rocks, the oceans, everything, is basically just a screen. And underneath that screen, there's a fundamental pattern, a kind of code, that's actually running the whole show. Think of it like a video game. You see your character running through a forest, but the computer, it just sees lines and lines of code. This theory says our reality works pretty much the same way.
So if reality is running on some kind of code, how does anything actually change? Well, according to this theory, it always, and I mean always, happens in 3 steps. First, you have step 1, the background. That's just how things are, the normal state. Then comes step 2, the push. This is where some new energy or pressure gets introduced into the system. And finally, step 3, the result. That's the change that happens to fix that pressure. The easiest way to picture it is with the guitar. The string just sitting there, that's number 1. Your finger pulling the string back, that's the push, number 2. And the sound it makes when you let it go, that's the result, number 3.
This brings us to a really cool part of the theory, that nature has a favorite rhythm, and it's built around the numbers 3, 6, and 9. Think about pushing someone on a swing. That first push to get them going, that starts the pattern, that's a 3. After a few more pushes, when they're flying high and the energy is doubled, you're at a 6. But 9 is the big one. It's the tipping point, the reset. It's like the moment you jump off the swing to start all over again. This 3-6-9 cycle is seen as a kind of universal timer for big events.
And the final rule we need to know is the octave rule. This is all about balance. The idea is that energy moves in octaves, just like in music. So when a huge event, like a major earthquake, hits a note in one spot, that energy has to be answered by a matching note somewhere else. It's all about keeping the whole system in tune. It's kind of like if you hit a high C key on a piano really hard. If you listen close, you'll actually hear the other C strings on the piano start to vibrate a little bit. They have to balance each other out.
Okay, so we've got the rules down, right? A coded reality, the rule of 3, a 3-6-9 pulse, and this octave rule. So now the big question is, how do we take these abstract ideas and apply them to the very real, very physical planet we live on?
And here is where it all comes together. The theory treats the entire Pacific Ring of Fire as one single connected system. Forget thinking of it as thousands of separate volcanoes and fault lines. Instead, picture it like one giant guitar string that's been looped into a circle. Or, an even better analogy is a hula hoop. If you take a hula hoop and give one side a little jiggle, what happens? You know that vibration is going to travel all the way around to the other side. Well, this model says the Ring of Fire works exactly like that.
So now we get to the heart of it. We've got the rules, and we've got our planetary guitar string. This is where we see how the theory connects a series of events that already happened to a specific forecast for the future. This is what it calls the coming echo.
It all starts with the push. Remember our rule of 3? This is step 2. So back in 2025 and 2026, a series of large earthquakes, all 6.0 or higher, hit the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. In the language of this theory, those quakes basically plucked the northern part of our planetary guitar string, sending a whole lot of tension into the system.
And here's how that leads directly to the 2027 forecast. That push up north created this unresolved tension in the whole system. That's when the 3-6-9 timer kicks in. The theory says that the 9, the reset, is set to happen about 18 months after that tension peaked. So that sets the clock, and it points directly to the echo, a big balancing event on the exact opposite side of the Pacific. And that brings us to early 2027.
The forecast is for a major earthquake, a 6.0 or higher, right at the New Zealand plate boundary. This is the result,
the final note in the sequence that's needed to bring the whole system back into balance.
So yeah, it's obviously a very, very different way of thinking about earthquakes. It raises the question, what exactly makes this approach so different from how mainstream science looks at the problem?
Well, the real difference is what's being studied. Standard seismology, for the most part, looks at the physical stuff, the rocks. It measures stress on fault lines to try and guess when they're going to break. The THD method, on the other hand, isn't looking at the rocks at all. It's studying the relationship between events, the energy, the timing. To go back to our guitar analogy, it's the difference between studying the wood and metal the guitar is made of versus actually listening to the music it's playing to predict the next note.
So why even bother developing a model like this? Well, the stated goal is actually pretty straightforward, to give people a heads up. The core belief here is that reality isn't just a string of random, chaotic accidents. It's a constant process of transformation that follows a pattern. And if you can figure out that pattern, you can map it. The ultimate hope is to help us live more in harmony with nature's powerful rhythms, instead of constantly being surprised by them.
And you know, that really brings us to a final, much bigger thought. This theory is being applied to earthquakes, sure, but the central idea is way broader than that. So we'll leave you with this to think about. If the universe really does operate on a kind of harmonic pattern, what other rhythms, what other songs could we eventually learn to hear?
And that's our walkthrough of triune harmonic dynamics and its 2027 seismic forecast, all based on the research of Kevin L. Brown. Thanks so much for tuning in.